ya guys. Gue sudah part 3, cuman itu lagi kurang keren guys videonya. Ini yang menang 2 tahun yang lalu ya guys, Vidcon 2 tahun yang lalu nih, para pemenang semua nih guys, para konten kreator di luar. Ini persembahan dari YouTube ya guys. Ke MSNBC.
There you have it. And I should say, we should all say hello to the people who are watching us streaming at home or work, wherever you are, as well. I think, we have to address the news of the day up top, and I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that this is perhaps one of the most consequential news days, one of the most consequential support decisions in a generation. You might have heard on your way in, you may just be hearing it now for the first time, but that in a 6-3 decision, the Supreme Court has struck down
Gak semua orang bisa dapat tiket nonton Vidcon langsung ya guys.
In the United States of America, leaving it up to the states, and within a matter of days or weeks, you could see abortion become illegal in as many as half of the states in the U.S. I want to just get right into it and start with Rashida. This is the 25th anniversary of MSNBC. You've been at the helm now for about 2 years. On a day like today, where do you see MSNBC fitting into the national conversation, both on our linear television channel and with streaming?
Sure. So I think today in particular is a really good example of why it's so important for us to bring context to stories like this. For a story like this, there's a lot of emotion. There are people who feel very strongly on both sides, and you're going to get that coverage in a lot of places. What we bring to the conversation is a depth to what's happening, is not only bringing that depth to the audience, but bringing it to you wherever you are. So if you're watching on cable, if you're watching on Peacock, if you're listening in the car, if you're following along on social media, our focus has really been how do we bring that content to you where you are in a way that provides the perspective that you need to understand what's happening.
Chris Hayes was on the air. You were on the air the night that this draft decision leaked. This was many weeks ago now. At this point, to me, what that said to me is, look, the importance of, first of all, let's talk about the decision, but also the importance of linear television and your broadcast. You do podcasts, you do live in-person events. We'll talk about that in a minute. But that felt like a night where he had
harus wajib nonton ini ya.
Knows what they're doing to make sense of something in the moment, and that was one of those moments. In fact, on that night, we booked the last block of the show.
Ini buat memacu semangat kita, guys.
About the court abortion jurisprudence.
With no heads up,
Tahu kita dapat undangannya. Dia semangat terus untuk bikin video ya guys.
I had that morning in the editorial call said, I think people are sleeping on Dobbs. I think they're going to do it, and I think we should just have this. So we had booked her, and in fact, later I saw a diagram that had been floating around parts of the internet about the conspiracy theory of who had leaked it. And part of the conspiracy theory that it had been a liberal who leaked it was that we had booked a guest that night in the slot to discuss it, like this was the smoking gun. But to your point, what I think is great about us sort of embracing all these different platforms that people are going to get, that same impulse in a moment like this to want to hear people with knowledge and depth and context talk about what's happening is going to drive people to us and to other places on a bunch of different platforms. So you want to be present wherever people are at to be able to have that conversation. And also, Simone, you are in a unique position to not only approach this now as a colleague of ours with a broadcast of her own, but as someone who was inside the White House as they prepared for the eventuality of this moment coming to pass. Talk to us about what do you think is going on inside the White House today? The president's scheduled to speak any minute now about this decision. He may be speaking as we're sitting out here, but also about who and how they're trying to reach the American people in the context of us being here, today in Vidcon talking about streaming.
So the First Lady Dr. Joe Biden was my first guest on my new show, and she said on the show that when the decision came, when the draft decision was leaked, she and the president were shocked. They were up in the residence. They got a call that said the draft decision was leaked, and they were absolutely shocked because they could not believe that this is what they were going to do. The president is someone who has been in elected office longer than I've been alive. Okay, I'm 32 years old. Joe Biden served in the Senate longer than that. And he is someone that has seen a lot of legislative fights, right? He's seen a lot of judicial fights, has been head of the Senate Judiciary Committee, and someone who I know believed in the systems and the structure, believes in stare decisis, believes in precedent. And so for this to happen, this is something, when the draft came out, it was a shocker to everyone in the White House, the president, first lady, vice president as well. And today, I just caught some comments from the president. And what he's saying is this all goes down to the states. There's very little that the White House can do. And this has been a recognition they've had for a very long time. Even before the draft decision, there were conversations we had on the campaign trail about if Roe was overturned, what would a President Joe Biden do? And he's always been clear, I would codify it in the law, but there were very few people, I think, that thought we would get there. On the flip side, there are advocates and people that I, have worked with for years who have been on the forefront of this issue that I have since had on the show because I believe, like Chris believes, people were sleeping on this. I had Fatima Graves on my MSNBC on the Cox show a couple weeks ago talking about the threat to Roe and what will happen when it is overturned. Because it's not an if, it's a when at this point. Hello, draft decision. And they have long since known that this is where we're heading towards. Handmaid's Tale is not hyperbole.
Ini para konten kreator yang sukses ya guys.
Let's get you in here. This comes
Yang
a
sukses
day
di
after
luar
another Supreme
guys.
Court decision. Today we hear that there's no federal right to abortion. Yesterday we hear that there's a federal right to conceal carry wherever you are, in a state like California is not able to restrict that right. What do you
Ada yang
make of the
dipilih dari
juxtaposition? What happened yesterday
California
and what's
guys.
happening today?
So first off, I would say if Chris Hayes ever asked you to go to Vegas with him, go to Vegas. Second, I would say there's that Chinese proverb or Chinese curse, which isn't Chinese, or a curse, which is may you live in interesting times. Right? And we live in some serious interesting times. I've only been at NBC since 2020, and the number of times I've had to say historic on the air is a lot, and it's not hyperbole. Time, everyone today is talking about Roe. Everyone's talking about impeachment hearings, insurrection. So many of the big stories of our time are connected. So when we talk about abortion, when we talk about the gun decision, that to me is not different to the democracy debate that my show and our network have focused on for the last 18 months, 2 years. Because the gun decision and the abortion decision are trying to join those dots, are trying to say to people, this is all the same story. Cover guns in isolation from everything else that's happening in the Senate. We cannot cover Roe in isolation from the fact that this court is a counter-majoritarian court doing hugely unpopular things. And, people say, Simone said, the president says going to the states. We know the president's going to say vote harder. We know the Democrats are going to say let's pass a bill in the Congress. I was just telling Chris, backstage, Congress can pass any bill it wants. The Supreme Court will shoot it down. Until you deal with the Supreme Court, you can't get anywhere. So for me, my show, we had Elizabeth Warren on when we launched in whenever it was, October 2020, feels like eons ago, talking about Supreme Court expansion. One of the few senators who talks about that stuff. It's been a big hobby horse of mine for years. We've got to talk about the Supreme Court. We've got to talk about the Supreme Court. And we're able to do that. We're able to do that with excellent reporters at the network who break stories on the court before anyone else. And we're able to do that because some of the hosts here, we have strong perspectives and we're able, as Chris says, to bring some kind of institutional knowledge, bring on great guests who can talk about this stuff, and not just from a perspective of people are angry and upset, which they are, but also what do you do about it? What options are open to the public, and what can we as the media, what questions should we be asking? My question that I'm asking from going forward, and have been very much so, is what do we do about the Supreme Court? What debate do we need to have about the Supreme Court in this country?
NBC and MSNBC has made a very significant investment in streaming. In particular, it's a loss to me at this time.
Right.
As someone who has failed probably more times than everybody in this room combined at streaming news, as the host of several platforms that were going to be hailed as the future of news, HuffPost Live, rest in peace, YouTube Nation, rest in peace, Take Part Live, rest in peace. Even MSNBC, honestly, we had our own streaming network 8 years ago, before you were in this job, before many of us were doing what we're doing. It didn't work out. Why is right now, why is what's going on right now the right time to spend so much money to launch this streaming platform, which is entirely distinct? While there's overlap, it's its own thing.
So I think if you want to go to Vegas with Chris, you also want to go with Jacob because he's slightly ahead of the negative way.
Break even.
We're break even, right?
Indiana Jones with the ball. That's why they're keeping me off of MSNBC on Peacock.
So really our focus is the audiences are changing. We know many of you guys, I'm not going to assume you're paying $200 a month for cable. Many of you are consuming content in places other than a linear channel. My own kids even think we don't have cable, and we do, because to them cable is this place or TV is a place where you get content, but they're not thinking about it as far as distribution. And so for us, as we're seeing the audience on linear television shrink, and it is shrinking. That is a reality. That is what's happening. Despite the fact that we're getting more of the audience, it's just a smaller pie to be had. What we're looking at is let's go where people are adapting to. Let's take our content to places where they're already consuming, and where there's growth and there's a runway and where there's a future. And so that's really what drove our focus in the streaming space. And we look at it as a holistic effort across the newsroom. We are not just MSNBC investing, but as a news group, we're investing. So you've got hard news content with NBC News Now. If you want to find out what's happening with the SCOTUS decision after this panel, not the second, you can go to NBC News Now, distributed on any platform, any streaming platform that you have, and that's where you get your hard news. If you want the depth and the perspective and understanding in the likes of Mehdi and Simone and Katie Fang and others, you go to MSNBC on Peacock. If you want to know what smart thing Chris Hayes said last night, if you want to know this morning or this afternoon, you go to MSNBC on Peacock. And then if you're interested in lifestyle content, we've got Today All Day. So our focus has been, let's take all of the good of what we do, and in addition to what we're presenting to you on a linear platform, let's take it to a lot of other places. And really, how do we tap into what we do well and take it to more places?
The MSNBC, I should say that we haven't even brought up the January 6th hearing. I mean, we brought them up, but we haven't gone in depth on them. The January 6th hearings have exponentially increased the audience on MSNBC on Peacock. I think 8x over the average audience. We've been the #1 cable network across the board for each of the hearings and each of the post shows. You were on last night because you were flying out here, but. Is that the type of content that's going to attract people, do you think, to this product? It's a premium product. People have to pay for MSNBC on Peacock. Is it going to be based around live events, and is that what's going to draw people in?
I think it's a combination. I think it's everything that is MSNBC. It's when the live event is happening, how do I find out what's going on? When the live event has happened, how do I listen to a Chris Hayes to understand why it happened? And what does it mean for me? It's also topically. There have been times, and Mehdi's team has done a really nice job of this, where there may be a topic that's not in the news, but we spend a little bit more time into a one topic hour dedicated to it. How do we take an interview with Chloe and Haley, little old, Chloe and Hallie, that Simone might bring to her show on either cable or streaming, but it's a different audience, it's a different focus. We get to do not just one thing in the streaming space, we get to do a lot of things, and I think what people are seeing is you get a holistic experience, because we're not just one beat where there's breaking news and our numbers spike and then there's nothing else to come back for. We want to make sure there's plenty more to come back for.
You, in some way, were the tip of the spear when it comes to sort of diversifying your platforms within the networks of NBC News and MSNBC. I mentioned earlier you did with Pod Why Is This Happening podcast. You have in-person live podcast events. I think you guys have a little bit of an announcement today about you might be resuming your live studio audience shows that you've been doing. Are you just want to be aware? First of all, confirm is that every day?
Yeah, so we're gonna bring this back. The last one we did actually was here in Los Angeles on a studio lot. The day before we were supposed to do one the next week in Michigan. I was like, I don't think we could get a bunch of people into a room together.
A little thing called COVID.
But
take us inside your thinking. Why were you were so far ahead of everybody else in terms of deciding to?
I want to, I love podcasts, and I want to make podcasts. I love live events, that's the kind of thing I'm into. So I wanted to do that. I love, being part of the sort of kinetic feeling with an audience. A day or two later, if I'm, on the, in the car or something, not driving. So to me, being able to kind of, basically, there's a group of people, I realize there's a group of people that I know and love and who would maybe like what I have to say, who aren't necessarily watching me at 8 o'clock. I mean, a huge thing of it, honestly, I have 3 kids. I got a 10-year-old, 8-year-old, and a 4-year-old. people my age with those kids, like, show, but they do listen to the podcast, right? So that was a big part of the thinking was I want to be able to, you know, create stuff that I'm into and that I would like to consume myself that the people who may not be able to watch the show can also enjoy.
When you came, Simone, I read that you said, I want to make sure I get this right, something to the effect that you want to come to a place where there was a significant investment in and focus on the streaming presence.
Yeah, an established track record.
Why was that important to you?
Because I think while, look, as a former communications person for my entire career, the television was important, right? What is happening on TV matters. I picked up the phone and called everybody on this panel at one point in time, like, what was that? So it matters. But streaming is not just the future, it is the right now. I'm 2 years old, and I can tell you when I wake up in the morning, the first thing I do is not turning on the television. I check my Twitter, I check my Instagram, I check my email. When I listen to this, the first time might be when I get in the car to turn on Sirius XM.
Right.
And then that's where I am hearing it.
Right.
So I wanted to go to a place where there was an established record in doing that, where we could do some evergreen things. I interviewed Chloe and Halle Bailey, the pop superstars, last week, and we talked about, it was Juneteenth, so we talked about Juneteenth. They were at the Vice President's house, but they also just performed. Chloe dropped a song. That is something, we played a little snippet on my MSNBC show, and then long form, it was available on Peacock, and we played it on the Peacock show on Monday and Tuesday. So I think that creating content for people like me, the non-political group chats who they are looking at the news today like, what is happening? I want to hear from some people with some context about what is going on, but they also want to know, like, what is Lori Harvey doing? So I'm interviewing her today too, and we're going to drop that this weekend.
When you were in the White House, Dr. Fauci and the president and even the vice president held these sessions with creators, with people who have. I've never felt less famous, by the way, walking around at VidCon. But there are people who are being chased around rapidly that maybe some of us may have never seen before.
Millions of people are following. Lots of folks, probably some people in this room, on this Zoom. Those
what
people
can
matter.
we learn? What can all of us learn? What can a network like MSNBC learn from the sort of that engagement strategy that the White House has been very forward on?
Yeah, that's a good
EOC
point.
was streaming on Twitch with Hassan Piker. I mean, politicians are getting it. Are news networks understanding it? Are we there yet?
I think we are on our way there. I think MSNBC definitely gets it for sure. And bringing on different content creators as parts of shows, as parts of panels, partnering with them on different things. It's not just being on these different platforms, right? Because I can be on TikTok, but what am I giving the people? I can Instagram live, but what are we doing? Like, is the content engaging? One of the things we do on our show, on the MSNBC show and the Peacock show, I have something called the Culture Corner. So on Sundays, you can tune in for the Culture Corner. It's usually at the end of the show. Same thing on Mondays. And I bring in people who do not do politics. They are DJs. Some of them are, I've had TikTok stars on, and they are commenting on the things that are in the group chats. So we talked about Drake and his album, and like, honey, this is not hip hop, but what if
I still like it.
Okay, see? Chris, it's in Chris'
yes?
chat. You're a yes?
Yes. Yes. You're a maybe?
Why? We need to do another listen.
Why?
Stop. This is the Culture Corner right here, folks. Okay, tune in, Simone.
We'll clip this and put it on the show.
I'll say this because I'm a middle-aged dad. It's good music to write to.
All right.
Which is
That
maybe a
answered my
definitely
question
thing to
also.
say,
That's
but-
why it's a maybe for me.
You see, this is key. People, you see what I'm talking about? The political conversations are important. I've made a career doing that. I think it is critical. I think everything in our life is politics. But there's so many other things that people are discussing and talking about. They want an avenue to see that.
Go ahead. I just had a funny moment the other day that felt like a big moment for me, which was that a monologue I did came up on my TikTok For You page algorithm. When I was like, oh, look at that!
Look at that guy.
That's me. And but that made me happy because I spend a lot of time on TikTok these days, and I'm pretty fascinated by it, and it's pretty deep in my mind, and so I was like, okay, we're there too. That's good.
Yeah.
Well, we call the demo audience, I think, what is it, 25 to 54.
Yep.
People here are 13, 11, 10, 12. I mean, they're driving consumer choices. That is a extremely powerful block. I know they're probably too young to be news consumers in the traditional sense, but have we given up? I mean, is television, not us, but has television given up on it going towards that younger demo? Is there a way for us to reach young people who are here running the
I
halls?
think absolutely. It's a little bit of what Chris and Simone said, and a lot of what Mehdi has been doing is this idea of taking the content, adjusting it for the platform, and bringing it to different audiences. And Mehdi, I know you spend a lot of time curating your Twitter presence in a way that I can get the rant, I can get the monologue. A million other people will get it too.
Who don't watch cable.
Who don't watch cable, and
Yes.
that's how you're bringing that content to other people.
But Twitter's for old people, right? That's the other problem. So that's why me and Chris have to go on TikTok now.
Yeah.
With our kids.
Join us.
My 15.
I'm
Simone.
scared.
I mean, Simone, we wish we were your age. My 15-year-old is mortified that I'm on TikTok, and our TikTok account is very lively, and we're doing a lot of TikTok stuff. And I never thought I'd be on TikTok. I'm in my basement in a t-shirt making TikTok.
Forget TikTok. You have an amazing story about Peacock. What did you know about Peacock when you were pitched to doing
Streaming,
the show?
I was late to streaming. I was very late to streaming. My streaming is like Netflix, right? Not news streaming. And Phil Griffin, who is Rashida's eminent predecessor, rang me in the summer of 2020. And I was binging on Ozark and binging on junk food in the lockdown. Said, do you want to host a show on Peacock? And I said, what's Peacock? As I furiously Googled on my laptop while I smoked beer. And then I said to my agents afterwards, I was like, do I want to go work for Peacock? Is that a good career move for me? And in hindsight, it's been a great career move for me. I'm a man who regrets a lot. And I went to Disneyland yesterday. I regretted a lot of lines. I regretted a lot of lines I stood with my kids. I can honestly say I don't have any regrets about Peacock or NBC because it has given me these platforms and the freedom to innovate. You know, people talk about editorial freedom, which we do have, and I love it. But even more important than that right now is a kind of innovative freedom to be able to say, like, I went to these guys, not to Rashida per se, but to my executive producer on my show, and I was like, a guy called Ben Mayer at the time, who's a very straight shooter, and I said to him, I'm going to do all of Donald Trump's achievements. This is all of his craziness. This is the night before the election in 60 seconds. I want to do it in 60 seconds. I want you to put a timer on it, and we're going to have a buzzer at the end. I was like, this is a crazy idea. And we did it, and it had like 1.2 million views, and it was substantive. It wasn't crazy. We went through all the stuff that Jacob's covered, like family separation, everything else. We turned that into a thing, and that's now a thing that exists. We just put it, the last week's one, we just put it on TikTok. It's had something like 200,000 views on TikTok in a day. So that's stuff that we're proud of. It's kind of fun, it's quirky, it's not the kind of stuff you traditionally get on cable, but it works on social, it works on different platforms. And I've always seen all these platforms as interconnected. I don't see cable here, streaming there, Twitter there, TikTok there. Some people try and use social media. The old way was, like even 2-3 years ago, as recently, it was a marketing tool, right? How do we boost the show with the Twitter account? That's not what we do now, and we never should have done that. Now it's, how do we use the best content from the show to boost Twitter, to boost our TikTok presence, like the Mehdi Hassan Show TikTok account, which I'm sure you're all following. Shameless plug there. We have 5 times, I checked this because I thought I'll have a stat for you. We have 5 times the followers that the official Fox News TikTok accounts, because Fox doesn't care about TikTok. Fair enough, their audience is like 95. But like even the CNN official TikTok account, our show, our little show, has half the total followers of CNN. That's not because we're better than CNN, it's just because that's what we're focused on right now. That's what we think is important. And because we're not just dumping content from the show on there. That's the key. Yeah. Like nobody in this room wants to be insulted in that way to say, we're into social media and streaming. We're just going to put whatever we did on this old network for you. That doesn't work. And that's why on our show, and Rashida kindly mentioned that, like, we do think about it. There was a time when you would say, oh, how's this going to play on social? And we'd feel embarrassed about it. We don't feel embarrassed about it now. When we talk about the show of 4 blocks, I say, well, this block is a block that will work in different platforms as well. And that's not a shameless thing. That's something we're proud of.
The clock is telling me we're done, but I would love to get, Rashida, your final thoughts on where we go from here. Where would you like to see MSNBC on Peacock be, you know, another year, 2 or 3 years from now?
Yeah, I mean, we want to continue to grow. I want to find opportunities for more innovation, whether it's creating content that's uniquely and originally for that platform. You know, we briefly talked about Chris's live shows. This is a place where we can experiment and we can go do a live studio audience show that's specifically programmed for a streaming audience. That's maybe longer, shorter, a slightly different format, that's slightly different from the cable audience. So more experimentation, I think, is going to be important for us. And I would also say new faces. This is also a place, because linear television is exactly that. It's very linear. There are 24 hours in the day. There are only so many shows you can launch, so many people who can host them. But in the streaming space, because you've got VOD options and live options, you've got much more real estate to try out some new things. You can throw some spaghetti at the wall and see if it sticks, but bring in new voices, new perspectives, people who look more like America, and that's really what we're focusing on.
Okay, pleasure to be here with all of you guys. Pleasure to be here with all of you. Thanks so much for being here. And go right now, turn on your...
On any platform.
On any
Okay. All right. Okay.
That was really incredible.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think it's incredibly fascinating to hear how a entity as ingrained and as profitable in traditional media and entertainment is navigating their way through a 24/7 digital social media world.
I like the part where Simone was just talking about like her habits of the day, like first social
Ini
media,
pembawa
then
acaranya nih content creator juga
podcasts,
guys.
and like TV wasn't really in that, so I think she's not 15 years old. She admitted her age. I think she's at 32, which means that this is we're changing behavior, guys. It's not just the kids, right?
Definitely top of mind for Zorg, and very cool to see what they're doing and God's work going on, reporting on the news of the day.
Yeah, that's it. We have a great panel coming up.
We do, Lauren. We have someone from Duolingo coming out. You're a fan, right?
Oui, j'adore Duolingo.
And I forgot my notes about...
Oh, pas de problème. J'ai un... Oh, one second. Voilà.
This is live.
Oui,
Entertainment.
oui, maintenant.
Two.
Oui, Zaplia est très intelligente.
Some translating here. Thanks to our daily research, keen sense of trending topics, and Gen Z Wit, the account grew to over 3 million followers in less than 6 months and was recently recognized as one of AdAge's top 5 brand TikTok accounts.
Oui, maintenant je parle français et Zaplia est là.
Zaria will share with us how Duolingo implemented a test and learn approach, empowered Gen Z talent to take the script on traditional marketing.
Formidable! Bienvenue, Zaria Perez!
Thank you.
YouTuber juga guys dia.
Think we might need a clicker? Hey guys. How's it going?
Ini YouTuber juga nih guys. Dia dapat tiketnya nih.
Clicker anyone? No, it's nothing here. No. Yay!
Dia dapat tiket undangan nih guys. Dia YouTuber juga guys. Dia dapat tiket undangan.
Hi everyone, I'm Zaria, otherwise known as Duo on TikTok. I'm sure you've seen the videos of an owl twerking on a conference room table, or perhaps giving birth to sponges. That was my chaotic brain. Now, we've seen the numbers in the headlines. I don't think they tell the full story. And the story I'm about to tell you today, the story of our TikTok success and how we became one of the leading brands on the platform. Now, before you regret coming to my talk, I know many of you are here for the million-dollar question. How do we go viral too? Give us the brand impact, the numbers, the strategy. And I'll get there. I'll get to that marketing jargon we all know and love. But if there's one thing you take away from this talk today, I hope it's this. There is a method to the madness. Nothing is ever random chance overnight success. It's calculated risk. And sometimes, in the middle of the ride, you find yourself thinking, the risk I took was calculated, but man, am I bad at math. So, as someone who likes to be in control of every situation, I thought it'd be helpful to let you know what I'll be covering today. First, we'll talk about intersectionality, what it is and how it was the golden ticket to our success. Then, we'll jump into calculated risk and how we've defined it at Duolingo. And lastly, the road to virality, the ups and downs, the ebbs and flows, and really all the lessons I've learned along the way, and am continuing to learn. So let's jump in. Intersectionality it's essentially defined as the different systems of discrimination in our world, be that based on your gender, age, race, ethnicity, how they all, I guess, intersect together to create unique dynamics, effects, and perspectives. So for me, intersectionality in my life is being a woman, it's being a person of color, and it's being a Muslim in America.
Now, intersectionality catapulted Duolingo's success to take calculated risks and be where we are today. Intersectionality has helped us think about what it means to talk to different people at different times and really grasp this idea of risk. Now, I want to tell you a story about an angel born in 1998 to two Pakistani immigrants in Portland, Oregon. They had strong hopes of her becoming the third redemption child and one day going to med school, and that clearly did not happen. As you can see, in a family full of doctors and engineers, I decided to be an owl on TikTok. Now, it's safe to say I have a very interesting life growing up. I was a Pakistani girl attending Catholic school for a majority of my life in one of the whitest cities of America. In fact, I actually got suspended in 6th grade for creating an accidental viral YouTube video about why students shouldn't be attending my school. And I guess at that point, I should have anticipated a career in social media was in my future. Now, jokes aside, the thing all first-gen kids have, and anyone with really an intersectional background, regardless of ethnicity, is that we're all shapeshifters. The thing is, when you're trying to balance your identities and knowing how people think, act, behave, and most importantly, perceive the world around them. So for example, one day I can be the perfect Pakistani daughter to my mom and her friends, and then the next day I can be at lunch with the popular kids, pretending my mom didn't make me Pakistani food for lunch. So you're really good at managing these different identities and figuring out what part of you want to show to certain people at a specific time. So then when that comes to actually running a social account and doing the same thing, trying to speak to different audiences, it becomes gut intuition. And I'd argue that that really can't be taught. Sure, it might take some time, but the gut intuition that comes from just being intersectional is undeniable. Now, here's the kicker. Although I'm standing on the stage talking to all of you, I'm not special. If I'm being honest, I was given the opportunity because of the access I had. I was a student at an amazing university. I got accepted into an awesome advertising program. I was given opportunity after opportunity. And if I'm being really honest, I was born into a family of US citizens. That in itself has its own privilege. Thousands of other Zarians who are waiting for their chance to do what I've been able to do. When I was applying for this job, it asked for 2 to 3 years of experience. I may not have had the years on paper, but I had wisdom far beyond my years. And the skill set I brought forward was not only sought out, but it was empowered. So I urge you to think about the first-gen immigrant kids, the people with intersectional backgrounds, and what it means to actually empower them. Not just give them a spot on the diversity roster, but actually give them space and trusting the shapeshifters and the perspectives they bring forward, because those are the ones that are going to be changing the industry and probably talking on stage next year. All right, that was kind of heavy, so let's take a breather. It would be awesome for me if you guys could raise your hand if this is true, if your boss has said absolutely no to an idea that you knew would work. Okay, quite a few. Okay, so you know what I've been through. For those of you not raising your hand, I'm going to guess you're probably the boss that says no. Either way, this is for you to think about what it means to take risk. Now, one of the most annoying things about working in social media is that everybody thinks they can do your job better than you. Just because Betty can post a throwback Thursday photo of her dog, all of a sudden that becomes, just make it go viral. It can't be that hard. And while it would be great to have the magic potion to make everything go viral, I don't. And the truth is, it's incredibly hard. And we all know to break through the noise, it involves risk. And that's really the cornerstone of good marketing, but really anything in life with impact. So then that begs the question, how do I take risk without, if I'm being very honest, avoid getting canceled? And as someone who has been on both ends of that spectrum, I would love to talk to you about calculated risk. At Duolingo, we define calculated risk as a consciously bold decision that marries intention and impact. And this is a very marketing, jargony definition. So I want to walk through what really goes on in my brain before I hit post on a TikTok video that might raise some eyebrows. So here's my step-by-step guide. Number 1, you must anchor your brand in a human truth. At Duolingo, our human truth is language learning is hard, so we make it fun. So when we're posting our content, we often ask ourselves, are we having fun? Is this true to our human truth? Is this content that I'd actually want to engage with? And if it's not, then we're not posting it. Next, the trusty cost-benefit analysis. In life, there's always stuff to gain, and there's always stuff to lose. And that comes to what content we post as well. So when we're thinking of what we want to put out there, we really have to think, what is going to be gained externally, maybe internally, and vice versa. And another funny thing about working in social media is that your fans and audience can absolutely adore what you're posting, but it could be absolutely despised internally. And our social team at Duolingo has decided that when that happens, we tend to ask for forgiveness instead of permission. And lastly, you should be ready to engage with your community. If you're posting something risky, it's very likely that people have something to say about it. A general staying on for 15 minutes after we post just to see what people are saying. And sometimes it means acknowledging that yes, there are sponges coming out of this owl suit, and that's okay. Alright, now this is the fun part. These are lessons I've learned that I hope y'all don't have to learn the hard way. And it's all about our road to virality, the ups and downs, and just what I've been going through in this past year. And the one thing I would love to preface this with is that it's never fluke, but it's based in human truth. A lot of people think that we kind of just post whatever, do whatever, and see what sticks. And while that would be amazing and make my job 10 times easier, there's actually a developed strategy that existed far before I even started at Duolingo. As I mentioned earlier, our human truth was language learning is hard, so we make it fun. That was on our Instagram, maybe not to the extent of what it is on our TikTok, but it was also in our language lessons that we have on our app. We always have silly sentences, and that's just been part of our DNA. My job was just to bring it to TikTok. So number one, you have to chase ideas and then trends. If you're familiar with our content, some of you may be thinking I'm steering you wrong because a lot of our content is trending content. But what I mean by this is when you have ideas and storylines, you know, like Duo loving Dua Lipa, you tend to have a general idea of what your audience likes. And then when you have these ideas that you're excited about, you can get approval from them earlier, you can let them marinate and really develop them. And inevitably, the way TikTok works is that the same trends kind of pop up in different shapes or forms, and you can just match that to your ideas. It's all about being proactive rather than reactive. This really expedites the approval process and is often the answer I give when people ask, how are you not fired yet? So, if you're curious what it means to be a trend spotter and find the actual trends you want to engage with, these are my trusty rule of thumbs. Feel free to take them or leave them. Number one, if an audio has more than 30,000 views, I tend to start to say like, all right, this is becoming something. If it's too small, you probably can't pick up on it as easily because the algorithm's not going to favor it. But 30,000 has been to be a really great sweet spot for us, and I'm sure it works for many other brands. Number two, trust your gut instinct. If there's a sound that keeps popping up on your For You page, it's you laugh, I'm inspiration for someone who may feel I don't have anything. It was just me until very recently. And I knew TikTok was important and it was somewhere we needed to be, but I had no idea where to start. Actually, back in September of 2021, TikTok announced that they had 1 billion monthly active users. And I remember seeing that everywhere and like everything was just about TikTok. And the number one thing that went through my head is, all right, if they're on TikTok, how are they going to come on the eyes? And that was when Strategy was born. At the time, I didn't have the resources. It was the middle of the pandemic. I couldn't go into the office to actually film content and do things. So I started using the comment section as a new push notification. So I'd go to viral videos, and it's funny because this weekend I've met many viral videos that I commented on and I don't remember. But we would comment on them and say something engaging and exciting, and that wasn't about Duolingo. We wouldn't talk about language learning, or we wouldn't say weird, cringy things. We would just talk about what was going on, and people ate that up. They loved it. And suddenly we would comment that, and people would be, oh my God, I need to go do my lesson. Thank you for reminding me, without even saying anything. And in fact, when we had a viral comment, we'd see a huge uptick in users to our app. So it works. There is business impact with what you do on this platform. And that's fine, right? And but that all came from a $0 budget, a crusty owl suit, an iPhone, and a brilliant idea. I was put in a what it means to take risks and be bold and be ourselves, but also manage so many expectations. And that's a lot like working in social media. You want to be different audiences, you want to make an impact. And keep your eyes open, learn TikTok day by day, can be on this stage talking to me next year. And I know I can learn so much from all of you as well. And I trust that all of you got this. Thank you. I really tried to do, and this is a little bit of my personality too, is I don't allow people to say no to me. And so when I was talking to my role manager, it's funny because my role manager is sitting right there, hi. TikTok is becoming a thing. I believe without any KPI. And something I was just talking about the other day is like, I feel like I'm 24 and I feel like I'm growing up now in the social media community in front of everyone. And like, these are my 20s and these are like mistakes I'm making and exciting things that are happening to me. And it's all like everyone's almost like my family, that social media community and stuff.
Have you made mistakes on behalf of Duolingo?
Oh, absolutely.
And so what are some that you can share?
Oh my God. Let's see, where do I begin? So once I posted this video, and it was like a trending audio, and it was really fun, and I posted it, and my role manager was like, yes, absolutely beautiful. Actually, I'm gonna explain it. So there's this audio with My Little Pony, and
Amazing.
It's innocent, right? It's innocent. I still will die on a hill for this one. And essentially what it was is that it was like three people, and Duo is of course one of the people, and you get into the shape of a pony, and we had a couple who worked at Duolingo, and I was like, hey guys, you want to be part of this video? And they're like, of course. And essentially it was someone had to be like a little horsey, and then somebody sits on the back and goes like, woo! It's My Little Pony. But you see where this is going. When you see it as an outsider, it was very sexual.
Got it.
But so then the CEO was like, bro, like, I've let your tongue do so much, you gotta take this down. So I took it down. It's still on the internet. But for me, it's like, that was, you learn from an outside perspective.
So that was some internal a little bit of an internal audit.
Yes.
Have you gotten outside pressure, like audience audits before about like, yo, this maybe wasn't the right tone or was this mark, anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, something with like our commenting strategy, I once made like a comment that I probably shouldn't have said. And I think at the time it became like, my whole world felt like it was ending because the internet can be really cruel.
Yeah.
But I think at that point I was like, all right, my batting average is 99%, and if I make a mistake once, I'll pick myself up and learn from that. And I think what was also really awesome is that like, people are like, you made a mistake and it's okay. Like that's what life is about, and like this is how you learn. Being in social media, and I'm sure a lot of social media managers can relate to this, is like sometimes you just get in this zone of, all right, I need to get this done, I need to get this, make this go viral, see what I can do, just go, and you don't take a step back to sit down and process. And now that's like a huge lesson I learned, like slow your roll, girl, like push the brakes, and it's okay to like stop.
Do you think that the environment we're in now has been a little bit more forgiving of those kinds of things? Because it used to be, I don't want to talk about cancel culture or anything like that, but like it was a little bit more, you kind of make one mistake, and depending on the gravity of the mistake, it can be severe, and people should have repercussions for that. But seemingly like less severe mistakes were punished disproportionately because there would be some kind of outrage. Do you feel like that's kind of calmed down a little bit and people are a little bit more forgiving?
I would say yes and no. Yes, I think people move on faster because we just keep canceling different things. But something that like I really struggled with when like I had my big moment of being canceled is it went from like accountability to like, I guess, constructive criticism to like hate to like, you're like, this is why Muslims shouldn't be in America. This is why like brown women shouldn't be working. And it's like, if I was a white woman, I know that wouldn't have happened to me in that shape or form. So yes, it's getting easier, but I still think it's incredibly difficult as a person of color in this industry to like be who you are without everyone criticizing everything about you.
100%. So how do you personally navigate through that?
Yeah, for me, well, my two best friends are right there, and we all grew up in the same, like, we were all brown Pakistani girls growing up in Portland, and like, they get this experience, and what I was talking about being a shapeshifter so much, and that's who you depend on, in your hardest times. It's like your childhood friends, and took a step back, and then also at Duolingo, my team is amazing. and was like, take 2 mental you. And even when I was successful, when I first started, I remember my role manager being like, we're so happy for you and we're really excited, but if shit hits the fan, we're also your team and are always going to be here for you. Right, and that was even before all this happened. So that was really cool to see both ends of the coin and be at a company that supports failures and mistakes.
And so do you feel like, I mean, I'm bringing it up because you brought up your age too,
Yeah.
but do you feel like your kind of age makes you especially equipped to kind of deal with this stuff because you've been dealing with it since you, I don't know, were conscious, have like cognitive memories?
Yeah, yes and no. I would say more so than my age. Again, it was just my identity. Someone was asking, like, how do you deal with being canceled? And I was like, you have not had a strict immigrant father. Once you've had a brown dad, like, none of you faze me. Like, you don't get it. Like, my dad, like, I was so funny. I was showing him a photo of this room. He's like, there's still time for med school.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not joking. Like, that's just, like, how it is. And I think growing up with that identity, like, it made me more, like people don't faze me as much, but also the internet knowing that things are echo chambers and little bubbles. And if you go get coffee the next morning, your barista's not going to know who you are.
Yeah. Super interesting perspective. And it's just, like, switching gears a little bit into actual, like, your day-to-day, how do you come up with these ideas?
Yeah.
Is it, like, can you just take us through, like, one TikTok?
And I talked about, for instance, that's making me laugh, has been 30,000 views, and make an impact. I save that audio, and then I really think about unique things that Duo can do. And what's really cool is that we made Duo into a creator himself. So it makes it easier to, like, latch onto trends and ideas. And then, okay, I have the idea, I know the caption copy, I call Mark. Like, I think about what it means, like,
Oke, guys,
it's just
sampai
my
di sini
brain.
dulu
I know, but are
videonya.
you like, let's go, are you like writing down
Guys,
5
sampai
different
1
things?
jam guys.
Yes, I would do that. Yeah, I have. So it's usually just my notes app on my phone. I write 3 things of, like, how I would talk on TikTok and what
Jangan
that
lupa
would
untuk
mean from
dukung
Duo's
terus ya
perspective. Like, I know
channel
Duo's
vlog
quirky, he's
Shedhal-cumi
fun, he loves Dua Lipa,
karena
he
durasinya
likes to
panjang
call
guys.
out legal, like he has issues with everyone in the world, and like it's just like it's really easy.
Do you have a Google Doc with like a character study of Duo?
Yeah, absolutely. And we have like a
Ini dia
whole
lagi
like who Duo,
wawancara
like what
sama
Duo's likes and
artis
dislikes are. And it's
TikTok
really funny
Prancis ya
because
guys,
internally when you're having these
yang
discussions,
followernya
it's so
sampai
odd to be
miliar.
like, Duo loves to twerk, but he doesn't like to do My Little Pony stuff. And like
Kim
you have
juga
to like,
sampai
you just
miliar
have
nih
these.
guys.
Discovering your COO let
Artis
you know that Duo
Prancis.
doesn't
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So we did that, and then after I have the idea, I'll go to our Slack channel. I'll call Mark, who's in our Duo suit, who's sitting up there. And,
Semangat guys bikin
and she
kontennya
will
guys.
come join me,
Ini artis
and
TikTok
we'll film
guys.
the idea, and it can take anywhere from like 15 minutes to an hour, depending on like how intensive this idea is. And then after that, it's on TikTok. I show my boss, this is cool to go. This is the caption. This is the comment. This is the video, and then it goes off in the world.
How many do you scrap?
That's a good question. I would say quite a bit. Just because we'll like film different trends, and if it doesn't feel like it works well, I would say like weekly, I would say we film about 8 to 9 videos, and we probably scrap 3 to 4 of those.
And then was there anyone that like unexpectedly was just a banger for you?
Yes. And I guess looking back, maybe it wasn't as unexpected, but in the moment it felt that way. Our turning point where like everyone kind of freaked out was when Mark was twerking in the owl suit on a conference room table to this remix of a Cupcake Adele song. And it was just so
Oke guys,
funny.
sampai di sini dulu ya videonya. Karena durasinya panjang nih guys, bisa 1 jam lebih, bisa 2 jam.
And we were just like in the middle of it, and like I remember CEO walking around being like, God. And then like that was just it. And then we posted, and it was funny. It was like, everyone was just like so flat or whatever. So like him shaking and thumping, like it's like whatever. And the second it went out, like the numbers were like